As I was saying last time, their closest living relatives are basically tardigrades. Because, as much as they look like arthropods, they weren't actually arthropods. They were part of the same group as arthropods, the supergroup, I should say, but they were not actually arthropods, kind of like how tardigrades are related to arthropods but aren't. So there's a good chance that they were kind of squishy. It kind of makes me sad that there are no living animalacari. But at the same time, it makes a lot of sense that there aren't because, well, basically, the last living animalacari is believed to have been around in the Silurian period, but it's likely that they got outcompeted by fish, like many other things. Fish started to gain traction in the Silurian, and by the time the Devonian rolled around, he had the sole propriety of being basically the biggest thing in the ocean, just the number one and most populous animals in the ocean. There's a reason that the Devonian period was called the Age of Fishes. The most famous of these large and really elaborate fish, and one of the most famous, one of the largest and most famous of these, was known as Dunkleosteus, or as it's sometimes called, the dunk. I'm not kidding. Some people actually call it that. You're welcome. Ah, poo. Whee! Yeah, just can you guys tell I have a bit of love for paleobiology? Dinosaurs, as cool as they are kind of overrated. Don't get me wrong, I do love dinosaurs, but I mean, of course I do. Well, everyone loves dinosaurs. It's just there are a lot of other really interesting animals that lived long before them, and some of them are arguably much more interesting. It's like what's really unfortunate is that I don't really know a whole lot about how placoderms besides Dunkleosteus. In general, we don't really know a lot about how placoderms, especially since they kind of just seem to disappear. After the Devonian period, they just vanish from the fossil record. Or do they? You see, there's actually a major theory going around right now was supported by several different methods that had, and in actuality, the placoderms were some of the first fish besides the jawless ostracoderms and other very early jawless fish, and a lot of the fish we know today, including the cartilaginous fish, are actually descended from the placoderms. And that means that tetrapods are also descended from placoderms. And that means that all of us alive today are descended from them as well. And if you want to go into cladistics, technically nothing ever stops being the thing that it descended from. So, if you want to be technical, there's a good chance that we're all placoderms. Highly derived, highly bizarre, or highly intelligent placoderms. Cladistics is fun. That being said, I tend to like normal taxonomy more than cladistics because, well, for one, it's a lot less confusing. And two, well, sometimes you just gotta draw the line in between where there's and figure out where something stops being something else. Where in cladistics, again, you never stop being the thing that you descended from. The thing is, that's not really that helpful, because if you want to go that route, technically all living animals can be considered as some sort of worm thing that had probably appeared during the Ediacaran period. What's the Ediacaran period? Well, I did do a Tier Zoo parody video on stuff that existed at the time. You might want to go check that out. But to go into a bit more detail here, if I have time, I don't think I do really, but I can start. The Ediacaran period was the period of time before the Cambrian explosion. It's part of the pre-Cambrian Eon era, or whatever you want to call it. But it's a very specific part of that time. Like I said, it's the time just before the Cambrian explosion, where the first animals and some weird proto-animals existed. It started with Rangiomorphs, which are these weird, not quite animal, not quite plant things that have probably just absorbed nutrients from the water. And it kind of has spiraled out of control pretty quickly. Where we start seeing Kimberella, which may or may not be the first mollusk. We started seeing Dickinsonia, which is very strange looking. I would say what it looks like, but there might be kids watching. I will say, though, that it does look a bit suggestive.